Well, a bit going on this week, isn't there? The NST has a name, the Australian Championship. A little bit same, but more than anything, confirmation that the road we're travelling down at the prescribed pace. There's more news there as well, seeded foundation teams, another RFP phase, and the broadcasting situation as well. Then there's the Midweek Champions League games. Sydney put on a good show but fall agonisingly short of an advantage heading into their knockout second leg, where it's gone from bad to worse for the Mariners. 3 players injured in a game that didn't matter. Then we'll go international. The under-20s are off to a blistering start at the Asian Cup before returning home for more news on the Canberra men's expansion, transfer deadline day, and a look ahead to round 19 on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachlan, Avil, and we've drafted in the big guns for an episode that features a lot of Asian football content. Matt Olsen, good to have you on, Matt.
You know, it is a pleasure to be here. I just found myself drifting off and looking at my phone and then remembering we do video content as well. So I've actually reminded myself looking at the camera. But yeah, no, it's good.
Takes a bit of getting used to, but what have we done? Like 120, 130 episodes now, Jacob?
Too many. I'm nearing my 100th. I've got it marked down on our little Excel spreadsheet. I've marked the square gold so that I know when we're coming up on it. So yeah, it should be soon. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, you can't be too far away.
No, I think maybe a couple of weeks away if I appear on every episode. So, you know, that's probably bound to happen unless I'm sick or something.
So when you had your 50th episode, you famously held a cricket bat in your lap for the entire episode to raise it at the conclusion of the show. Will you also be wearing a helmet throughout the duration of your 100th?
Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to top it, to be honest. I've got to get thinking about what I'm going to do to celebrate at the end of that episode. But just you know, maybe that'll be a teaser. That'll be the way to get people in is come and see what I've got planned for the end of that episode.
I'm looking forward to see what you come up with. Let's jump into the news because unlike most of our Friday eps, we've got a lot to get through today. So we're going to start with the Australian Championship, and I want first opinions on the name. So Paletti, Chris and I talked about this briefly right off the news. We put a video up on YouTube, and I think obviously the links to English football are very clear. There's also this scenario, Matt, of in Australia where we have to clarify in the A-League between the Championship and the Premiership. How does that clarification now extend to different leagues as well? And then the logo as well. I know some people have talked about the fact that it's just the typical FA swirl that's been used a few times now. Maybe there was an opportunity to do something a little bit different.
Look, I'll be the first to say it's clear that they're running on a budget, right? You know, we're not going to come out and get a really sleek looking, you know, privately backed look for a new league. I mean, let's not forget that this isn't really in a league format to begin with. So I just think in terms of the overall look and style of it, I just don't think we have to care that much right now. Let's just actually get the competition up and running, please.
Fair enough. Jacob?
I kind of like it. The logo is just a different coloured version of the A-League logo from a few years ago before they switched to the weird A with a dot with a whatever on earth it is that you can do with like a slash and a full stop. But yeah, the name's great. I like it. You know, there's sort of this. Yeah, okay, in Australia, like you said, Lockie, you know, you have your champions and your premiers and but in terms of a football lexicon, it's, you know, the Championship is when someone says the Championship, it's the English second division. So there's that kind of already connotation that it's the second division, which I kind of like. And you know, they could have gone a lot worse. They could have done something really stupid, and everyone would have hated them. But you know, they played it safe, and I think it's actually a pretty decent choice.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it's a home run or anything, but they've picked a very solid choice, and I think people will understand. So we'll talk about some of the specifics of it, but first I want to ask you, Matt, a little bit more holistically, because a lot of football people, and I expect that a lot of people listening to this, it'll just be preaching to the choir, but what we want the NST to be, or the Australian Championship, I have to get used to saying that now. Yeah. What we want it to be is the first kind of stepping stone on this path to a full, complete Australian footballing pyramid, right? The fact that this is happening, does it give you more optimism that is somewhere in our future?
Look, I think in the way that anyone's envisioned this, you know, the competition has to be running and prove itself viable first. And I think that, you know, as a football purist, for me, I looked at it and I thought, okay, let's just actually see the rubber hit the road first. No one should be immediately calling for for promotion and relegation without seeing this viably become something. I mean, even in its stripped back format and teams still having their NPL duties involved with it, teams actually from majority of federations using their NPL to actually qualify for it. I mean, this is the scale of what we're talking about, right? So I think anyone, the football people compared to the mainstream public, I think they're sitting there nodding their head, agreeing with it, seeing what it is, and seeing hopefully the future that it can be something. But I think for the mainstream public, to the extent that they're even aware this is a thing, they might start asking question marks, and then hopefully, they see, one big impact, whether it be, a game with, a famous moment, some good crowd attendance, whatever it is that really sparks people in the right direction. And then we can say, hey, that's the second tier right now, and let's be proud of it. Let's get around it and ask some questions later. So, I don't actually think, even, going back years ago when we were having this conversation, the better part of 8-9 years ago, right, when David Gallop was still running around, I think, when we're having that conversation, we're saying let's do the initial 3 to 5 years as a temporary period, and that's ultimately what this is the manifestation of. So no one should be asking big questions now, and I think we should all be really proud of what has been built.
I agree. I think obviously there are certain things that are in the way. Number one is the fact that A-League clubs have licenses for the league for it's around 7-8 years, somewhere in that marker, right? So absolutely nothing is happening before then. We know that for a fact. If you allow yourself to dream a little bit, Matt, say like 10, 15 years, can I push you in that direction a little bit?
I don't want to think about it, because ultimately, in the same way that we had this conversation about promotion and relegation going back, again to the mid-2010s, what we were envisioning, is something that's actually just being manifested now in the year 2025. Well, sure, we can sit here and say, by 2030, let's hope we have a crowd with, five-figure crowds and teams knocking on the door to genuinely be A-League quality and good players, emerging in this second tier. But how can we sit here with confidence and say it? How can we envision it? You want to go dream scenario? I mean, of course. I want to see, Preston Lions knocking on the door of a side like Brisbane Roar right now. I would love to see it, but we just can't, in good faith, knowing what Australian football is, knowing what it constantly does to us. I personally, I can't go there yet. Sorry.
Nice combo with the Lions and the Roar, by the way. I'm not sure if you did that. Jacob, you come from the land of the ultimate footballing pyramid in England. I've given up trying to count how many leagues you could actually call are a part of that system there over in England. And what's your interpretation from that perspective on all of this?
Obviously it's completely different over there because it's a fundamental sport in the UK, whereas in Australia, that's why Australian rules football exists, is because it was brought over, football in its infancy here, and it spawned a new code while it was here before the Football Association sort of codified the rules of association football. So it's fighting an uphill battle already in the first place, but you've got to start somewhere, right? And I think the fact that we at least there's been an announcement it's going to start, considering a few months ago I was probably among them thinking this is probably just not even going to start up at this point now. The fact that they've at least gone, right, we've got the clubs, we're gonna give it a crack. Like I said, you've got to start somewhere, and as ill-fated as it may or may not be, you can tell there's good intentions behind it, right? That they do really, really want to give this a good shot. There's nothing in my mind better than just more football to watch. And like Matt said, hopefully, you do get that chance to see those clubs really prove themselves on a bigger stage than just their state leagues, right? Their NPL leagues in Victoria or New South Wales. So, hopefully it's going to be a really good thing. But this idea of having a massive multi-tiered pyramid, you see the like custom databases for Football Manager and stuff all the time, right, where they go down to like the amateur league level in like the Northern Territory and stuff. It's like that's realistically probably never going to happen, but we can have some semblance of at least a 2-tiered competitive league system in this country with the quality of football, the quality of players, and the quality of clubs that we have available. I don't see why it's not realistic, but it's got to start somewhere, and this is that starting point, right? So whatever happens, but at least they're trying, and they're going to try and get this thing off the ground. Yeah,
it's definitely felt closer than ever. And I'll just close off this little tangent by saying that as much as the clubs, towards the end of last year were quite publicly and obviously upset by the fact that we weren't getting a full home and away league. They seem to be quite positive about this move, and they're accepting that it is the small step that needs to be taken, while still maintaining their passion and ambition to grow beyond what they are now. The obvious example is South Melbourne. They've probably been the most vocal about it. Their general manager, David Clarkson, did a video on socials after this announcement was made the other day, and said the words, "We want to be in the A-League." That is their ambition. A lot of these clubs want that, just the opportunity to fight for it, and I think that's what we're all pushing for. So some of the particular details in this announcement: the tournament will start on the 10th of October, so 240 days from the Wednesday when it was made. We know the 4 groups of 4. We know now half of those foundation clubs will be seeded, so South Melbourne, Apia, Avondale and Marconi, based on the 24 results. And then the NPL premiers, or next best, depending on how it all works out, they'll be paired based on geography, so Queensland, Northern New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, etc. I think you'll get the idea. And then if we think about moving forward beyond this season, Matt, the evolution of the Australian Championship to a home and away league phase will be based on 2 things, and that is the success of this initial tournament and the success of Football Australia's 3rd search now for additional clubs to meet all their requirements to be a part of this competition. So that's started already. Football Australia have had what they're calling Phase 0 consultations, which is essentially just conversations with clubs about expectations and somewhat before they commence another official request for proposal, or RFP phase, in April. So we're going round on this wheel again. But what it seems like, and we've already heard a couple of clubs, Hume City, Melbourne Knights have gone public, and a few other whispers as well of clubs that are talking to Football Australia and putting their hand up to be a part of this competition in 2026.
Where I maybe am a bit bothered by that, just as a general strategy, is the fact that the clubs building a natural second tier are obviously going to be concentrated within the Melbourne and Sydney metropolitan area, right? And I like what they've done with obviously introducing, premiers into a Champions League format to try and at least ensure that it's national. Of course, Northern Territory not included because their top flight doesn't have NPL status, which I'm sure you guys are well versed on, but I don't know how much has been said publicly about that, so I just thought I'd mention it. But, I do worry about the fact that realistically, and I can comfortably say from a WA perspective, our clubs sure as hell don't have what it takes on a financial backing unless they really actually do bring extra investment and the community and probably the government realistically into it. And I do worry that if they want it to be a national second tier, they best not get caught up in hoping that a lot of private investment for the bigger clubs, in the kind of southeast area, doesn't overwhelm their equilibrium they're going for as well. Because I'd worry that they get stuck kind of halfway in between, and it kind of befuddles the future of the competition in some ways. But ultimately, the metrics are going to be more important than that. But it's just somewhere where my mind goes. The other thing I quickly say on that as well is I do wonder if you're in WA, Queensland. Even I know there was a proposed kind of Football South Australia merger that they were trying in Adelaide, right, Jacob? So. If it gets to the point where the feds might even get involved and start trying a team, or if you have 2 really big clubs that want to essentially attempt a formed merger for the purposes of the second division, if that's the kind of thing that kind of gets the second division up and running in a national sense. And I can speak of some really weird attempts that I personally know of. I know that you guys will be fascinated about this, and it helps that you're both from AFL states with what I'm about to say. But allegedly, Joondalup United, a very traditionally British-backed club, reached out to the West Perth Falcons in the Waffle. And their idea was, we will give you Arena Joondalup if you can be good enough and get enough of a backing in, even with some of our financial help, to be in a national second division.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing where, that is an AFL club, second division AFL club, stepping up and actually, providing the initiative to provide some sort of Joondalup super club, which is just wild to think about. Joondalup United, by the way, not even the biggest club in Joondalup. That's the funniest part. But yeah, look, I look at things like that and I think maybe there's some hope here, but I just hope it doesn't become a mess of some teams trying to merge, other teams, already have a big enough backing, the FA trying to go for some national approach where they're reaching out to a club in like Tasmania when, there's other movement going on in other areas. And I worry about that only being a net negative with so many parties having so many slices of the pie. So, I don't know.
The good news on that front is that Football Australia have said that their benchmark for getting a league off the ground is not just having 12 teams, but at least across a minimum of 4 states. So, look, my gut tells me the most likely options are South Australia and Queensland. I could be wrong on that front, but at least they're saying that they've heard feedback from the initial foundation clubs, from the reaction from that announcement, and said, we actually do want a national competition. And of course, if you get to the point where you are bringing teams in and out of this league, you don't have any control over which teams from different states actually, promote and relegate from this league. But for the time being, when it is this kind of closed shop, I guess some people would call it, wink, wink, it's good that they're at least trying to spread it across. One last thing before we move on, Jacob, in terms of broadcasting, we learnt as well that the Australia Cup is being split up for its rights as well. So the final and the semi-final are staying with 10, but for the quarterfinals, round of 16, round of 32 is actually being bundled together with the Australian Championship and put out to market. And Neil Simons would be very happy at the fact that SBS had a couple of little promotional socials ready to go when this announcement came off. I know that's a very nostalgic option, but it does seem that we're going to get a new broadcaster involved in one way or another.
And I think it's a genius move to bundle the cup with the championship, right? Because, the semi-final and final remaining with 10, but people still love to watch the Australia Cup, from the start of those knockout phases, the round of 32, right the way through. So, there's at least that little hook for broadcasters to grab onto. Of we're not just taking a gamble on an unproven league, we're also getting decent viewership of the early rounds of the National Cup. Like there's a decent little cherry on top. So I think it's a really smart move to bundle them together and do it that way. I'm surprised 10 gave it up, to be honest. I'm not quite sure what their agreement was there, but their loss is hopefully the gain for the rest of the Australian broadcasting media conglomerate, whatever environment, whatever you want to call it. They get the chance to take it on, and whether it's SBS or whoever it might be that takes it on, it's just to hoping that they give it the recognition it deserves, the respect it deserves. Obviously, that's one thing we're always talking about, is that football doesn't get respect in the media, and even from those who hold the broadcasting rights, and famously from those who hold the broadcasting rights. But this is a good chance to test out the waters of something different, right? Like we've had 10 and Paramount for a little while now. We had obviously Fox before that. Let's see what else is out there. Let's see what else could work and who's going to give it the time of day. SBS certainly seemed pretty keen on it, which is always, like you said, it's a nostalgic thing, but the whole point of SBS, it's the special broadcasting service, right? It's different. It's supposed to be that, and with the history that it has with football, that always helps as well. But we'll see obviously what happens with it, but I think it's a really smart move to package them together. It gives the championship a chance to actually be looked at seriously, because it's being partnered with something that's already proven to be successful. So hopefully it all pans out nicely.
I don't know if you guys have seen as well, but Disney Plus is starting to offer ESPN in Australia. So that's a real I'm not suggesting it for this specific purpose, but there is another sporting streamer technically in Australia at the moment, which I think is relevant to the conversation we had at DAZN a little while ago, purchasing Foxtel, which is interesting. But we'll move on from the Australian Championship talk. But while we're thinking about competition structures, we had some news break on Thursday evening. Simon Hill is reporting that the Canberra men's expansion team for the A-League men's competition will not be a part of season 2025-26. They're still looking at 26-27, but I guess the most important issue here, Matt, is the impact on the women's team, because there was a lot of, drama is the right word, towards the end of the last campaign when this was going on and on and on, and the future of a foundation club of the league. We saw how hard people have fought for the Newcastle Jets, obviously Wellington Phoenix, not foundation, but these kind of long-standing clubs in the A-League. Canberra United has arguably more history than some of those teams, right, in terms of their success in the A-League women's competition. So it's really unfortunate that this situation dragging on again is causing doubt for their women's side.
So I've told this story a few times in my time, while I've been accredited, and I thought I'd share the wisdom while we're on the topic. Growing up for me, I didn't have Foxtel, right? But I was someone who was always obsessed with sport, and my introduction to Australian soccer, arguably in many ways, came through the W League when it was on the ABC. And if you guys, and anyone listening that might be of age, if you distinctly remember what 2000 sort of 5-6 to about 2010, 2011 era W League was about, McKellar Park was one of the most intimidating atmospheres in Australian football. And watching it on an ABC, when the game of the weekend was a Canberra game, you were just thrilled. You just knew you were going to get fun and entertainment, a team that was constantly going to be playing for grand finals, And I just don't understand how that never built into anything bigger. It actually really kind of, bothers me that I think the thing with Canberra is, and again, I hate to always give a WA angle on things, but our struggles with trying to obtain a rugby league team are not too dissimilar with what a lot of sports in an area like the ACT go through, where there's private parties that are involved. The government pledge a lot to it, but it's not their main interest. And as a result of that, you end up getting a lot of detractors and just, essentially governing bodies that can't have that sort of eye-to-eye meeting with the people that matter in making it happen. And case in point is, you'll recall kind of, I believe it was kind of only, 3 or 4 months ago, that Simon Hill was reporting something about, a prominent minister in the ACT talking about building cricket facilities and trying to get a Big Bash team. It's like, the Big Bash isn't trying to expand. This is just bizarre. This is bizarre. Why are you talking about cricket? The sum of sport that anyone's ever associated with having a successful bid, and actually multiple bids, some that got a very serious backing in the ACT, was A-League and soccer. I don't get it. I really, really get quite uncomfortable with the Canberra conversation, because I just don't understand. It just seems to be in constant limbo, and it's very upsetting.
And Jacob, it's been constant silence, right? So I guess this is probably not a surprise to many people, but as much as, we heard, okay, they could be coming in this season. Now we're going to have 13 teams and it's a bye. Hopefully they're looking for next season. It's been the same all the way through. So there's not a lot of reason to say, oh yeah, 26, 27, let's lock them in, right? There's not that much certainty
just
here.
Kicking the can down the road, right? We've not heard any developments whatsoever, except for once every 3 months when Simon Hill puts a tweet out saying that, it's been delayed again. That's all the news we're getting. So is there anybody even interested in this is the thing, right? Because Matt, you've just said there's been a few times where there have been, but maybe these people are just like, we tried, and we're getting no support. Why are we going to keep trying for another 2-3 years? It's pointless. And it's then you've got the ramifications of the women's team, which you've both spoken so well about, in terms of being a foundation club, being one of the most successful clubs, being just an icon of the league, and then, now potentially again being in limbo for its mere existence. It's just, the whole thing is a complete mess. And it does sort of feel like just can kicking, we're just going to keep moving the goalpost, right? We'll just move it to next year. We'll give them another year. That'll give them the time to get the money and get, they haven't quite got it sorted. We'll give them another year. How many years do you give them, right, to get it together? We were having this exact discussion about the Jets, right? Well, they were still, in the league, but they were being propped up by the other clubs, and it was, how long do you give them before you go, we can't keep supporting you guys? You've got to get an owner or you're gone. With this, it's, how long do we keep up the illusion of having Canberra as a team in the league before we actually give up on it and go, this isn't going to happen? Because it seems at this point it's almost heading towards that inevitable ending, which is disappointing, because I think it'd be a great addition to the league. It's another decently close away day for the New South Wales based clubs and for the Victorian clubs as well. It's got the history of already having that women's team there and having a decent chunk of support there. Things seem pretty ready made for them. They've got the stadium there. just like it seems ready made. So the fact that we're not getting developments that you'd expect, Auckland I think was announced at around this point last season though, so it sort of feels like maybe this is a lot further away than anybody can even possibly imagine, because the fact it's just been stall after stall after stall and delay again, and we're going to move it again, and it's going to be another year again. It just feels to me like it's slowly slipping away from us.
I think
I'd also, can I just add that
sure.
I think the biggest thing that annoys me is we're going to have to go on with a bye in the competition, and we're going to have to go on with a lot of uncertainty there. It was very, very clear that the grand plan all along was to have 14 clubs that had a men's and women's department, and MacArthur's being obviously very stubborn with the women's side, which is a whole other conversation. But it's very obvious that they were geared towards this, and now they've kind of screwed themselves over as well.
And they've kind of let other opportunities pass them by here too, right? Because throughout all that, it's been years and years and years of this Canberra talk. Wollongong, everyone was eyeing them up as a potential. After Canberra comes in, it should be Wollongong. And it's like, well, maybe we should have been looking at Wollongong first, right? Or Tasmania, who have now been courted, of course, long term by the AFL, but it seems like that's pretty much set in stone. It's like, it feels like there are other opportunities that have passed by because everyone's been so focused on Canberra, and it just I think
what it is a clear indictment of the process of expansion, the way they're going about it. Now, this what I'm about to say next is my personal opinion, but now knowing what we know about the financial state of the APL, the timing of them coming out and saying, okay, we want $25 million for 4 different franchises, 2 to come in for 24-25 and then 2 more for 25-26. Don't forget, they wanted 16 teams by next season, and they're not even going to get their 14, right? So for me, it reads as a clear cash grab, a short-term cash opportunity. And now, not to rewind too much, but looking back at the competition we're starting up now in the Australian Championship, 3 to 4 years down the line, why should we be looking anywhere else to expand our top tier competition than the teams that have, or the clubs even, I want to say that, the clubs that have put in so much effort, Matt, to put themselves out there and make themselves available?
There's something that really riled me up mentally when you just said that, Jacob, about the Wolves, because let's not forget that they were a front runner even in the 17 draft.
Yeah.
The 17 expansion under Gallup, right? And that actually really would frustrate a lot of people. I mean, even all the talk for Tasmania, they've got their AFL team now, which is essentially going to kill other sports in Tassie. The Hurricanes just won the BBL. The basketball team became a thing and then won a title. I mean, soccer clearly missed its opportunity. And you just look at this and you think, well, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this again? The code just keeps shooting itself in the foot, and it's just another frustrating, annal of history where, I think we can at least understand that the APL are, I think, very well intentioned and do a lot of great things for the game. At least, even in the metrics of how it looks compared to how it did under the late stages of the kind of, FA monopoly and the lowies and all that. But the expansion conversation is one that just seems to drag on and make us more miserable as time goes on. So I can't really shake the feeling that there was a lot of missed opportunities in there.
Yeah, and I want to be clear as well, and I've said this probably throughout the last year on the podcast, I think the APL in its current leadership, probably for the last 18 to 24 months, have done a really good job, and they haven't made big errors, and a lot of what they've done that has been controversial has been wiping up what's happened before them, right? So this expansion was all started 3 to 4 years ago. You look at, top standards around the world, the MLS is the obvious one for the A-League. Their teams are given, 4 to 5 years notice before they join the league. Riley McGree was famously bought and sold by Charlotte, while they were an expansion club waiting to come into the MLS. I don't know why we're too surprised that teams can't get it ready within 12 months, I think.
Can I also just say, and you'll know from a bit of the post-game conversation with Kenta, I think the USL is actually in a better position comparatively to the APL than even the MLS, which really says a lot. They've got a long road ahead of them to re-establish the relationship. But I also think that, just a lot of people can be ignorant about what's going right for them.
For sure. Absolutely. All right, let's get into the midweek football action. Now, Matt, you and I have talked a lot about Asian football privately, but what you probably don't know is that much to the dismay of everyone else who appears on this show, I keep on bringing up the coefficient, and it was another bad week for it. We'll get to the Mariners, but we're going to start off with Sydney. So close to the win. Obviously, they went behind early, Jacob. But Adrian Segicic, we have to talk about him because he's come off the bench for Sydney FC so often this season because of how stacked their lineup is. He can barely get a run. He only has 6 starts in the league, but now 8 goals in all competitions coming off the bench. That trip to the Netherlands last year, that loan deal, has obviously done him a world of good. He's been some player coming off the bench this season. He's
been incredible for them. Like, just that second goal he scored was absolutely phenomenal. The way he basically had two half touches essentially before he hit it, and it's just perfectly hit. Like there's clear talent there, and yeah, you mentioned the fact that Sydney's squad is so loaded that he can't get into the starting lineup. I think he's pretty well knocking on the door. The problem is that it's, who does he replace? Patrick Klimala, he didn't score, but he was probably, I think, easily Sydney's best player in that first half. Single-handedly created himself a couple of chances, a few shots on target, looked really lively. You got Joe Lolly, who's ever reliable. He's not been quite his same self this season, but that quality's still there. You've got the likes of Douglas Costa, you've got all these quality players, and Aswahim, tons of players up in that front line for Sydney who how can you justify replacing any of them? But yeah, when you keep scoring goals off the bench like this, and a brace like that as well to put Sydney in the lead, and it felt like, hang on, Sydney are going to come away with a win here, and it's all thanks to the kid coming off the bench. It's it's incredible, and we've seen this with players in the A-League in the past, right? These sort of these match winners that can come off the bench and turn a game around and win a game for a side. But you also then have to ask that question of, is that where they're best suited, right? Is Segicic perhaps a specialist bench player because he can come on perhaps against some more tired opposition and take those chances, or will that translate to the full 90 minutes? It was the question that was asked about the likes of Iran Kunda in the past. Can he do it for the full 90? Yeah, I think you've got to give him the chance to see whether it's a possibility, and I think that he absolutely deserves it with the way that he's played so far this season. Like you said, 8 goals in all competition off the bench. I don't know how many more he needs to be honest to really say, hey Gaffer, give me a chance, because he's been phenomenal. If we start to see a bunch of injuries to Sydney's attackers, I'm not suggesting that Segicic will be the one culpable for it, but he'd certainly have his motives for it. But no, he deserves a chance to start and see what he can do over a full 90. Because if it's anything like he can do over 20 minutes, he could end up with 7 goals in a game.
Matt, talk to me about Bangkok United, because it's funny. I went through 2 different phases in this match of, they've done their homework here, and maybe they haven't done their homework, because the ball, splitting ball through to win the penalty was like a classic beat Sydney FC in transition, right? It's how teams have cut them apart all season. It's when they go forward in numbers, there's obviously holes, and if you can move quickly, you can get through them. And then they let Joe Lolly cut inside on his left foot 3 times. So maybe you don't know absolutely everything about Sydney FC, but they'll be very happy surely with a 2-2 draw and get to go home. Have the ability to win the tie at home.
Yeah, look, I couldn't help just shake the feeling that this was just the embodiment of everything that's wrong with Australian football on this type of stage. That was a team in Sydney that really dominated and should have won, and I ultimately left reflecting on what was it that Bangkok United ended up doing well. This is completely irrelevant, but they're owned by a TV network, and I'm sure there's some sort of euphemism there about how entertaining they were to watch. Moshin El Ghassani, that is actually like one of the better performances I've seen from an Arabic player on Aussie soil. He was so lively, and he didn't need to do a lot, but he didn't really have a lot of the ball from where he was, especially early on. I mean, Sydney were completely dominant, right?
Yeah.
But it's just the small phases of play where they're just reliant on, the timing of a certain run. And I mean, the winning goal from Tanatip Puchung was probably one for me where, I mean, he looked offside. He very, very clearly looked offside, but it was just one of those lucky moments where Sydney haven't done great defensively, but they've just caught the right moment. They've had, the right vision to really create something out of nothing, and it just feels that they were kind of on a string the whole game, just waiting for those one or two moments. But Sydney were kind of doing the same thing, where they relied on Segicic to play the way he did and provide the goods. So why is it that in a game where we're on home soil, we're dominating, that we almost look as fickle as they do going forward sometimes? I just can't wrap my head around that. It's probably the most troubling thing to come away from a Sydney perspective. And I mean, ultimately, I look at kind of going away to Bangkok, and I'm not that worried because I feel like it'll be a very similar game. I feel like it'll be very tense. I feel like there'll be sparring moments of attack here or there where both teams I just think are naturally going to struggle and be weighted by the stress of it all. However, I can't guarantee that Sydney are going to be as dominant when they're on the ball, if possession and everything goes their way in those earlier periods. And more importantly, when they are in possession, they've just got to find a way to be clinical, because being really clinical and physically strong is how you beat a Southeast Asian team. So I'd really like to think that there's going to be a bit of a football like you, purely from that sense where we know our physicality can be a massive strength going away. And I say we, I'm West Australian. I'm talking about Sydney FC like it's
I like that
like they are a
though.
national team, but it really begins to feel that way when it comes to continental club football, and the fact that this is a piece of silverware that we're defending. So I want us. I want them to go on and really, really do well here, knowing that there's a lot of jeopardy with John Book with the way they're playing at the moment as well.
I suggested last week that all the teams, the Australian teams competing in Asia, should just have a massive banner that says "for the coefficient" up in their changing rooms before they go out to games.
Well, what can I just say on coefficient though, and I don't know if you're about to touch on Mariners, but I think this week in particular has been the embodiment of what exactly is wrong. We have played two games, one against Malay opposition, the other against Thai opposition, and actually failed to win both at home. What does it say?
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting hearing you talk about the first half there for Sydney FC. They were so dominant. And when I was watching this game, I wrote down in my notes at halftime, this was exactly like Melbourne Victory's first half against the Newcastle Jets, where they had all the final third entries. They had all like the opportunities to get into the box and just couldn't be clinical. And it was just as frustrating. But that second goal, and we can talk about the first one as well, has really brought up the conversation of who should be playing in goals for Sydney FC, Jacob. Now, Devon Ishmeers came in a period where Redmayne was struggling. He was making a few errors. And I think I honestly got fooled because I wasn't too aware of him. And I heard Tommy Orr make this same observation on Total A-Leagues last week. I didn't realise he was 28. I thought, okay, if you're going to bring someone in for Andrew Redmayne, they're going to be like 24, 25 or under at least. And you're playing that youth angle. But considering his age, there's not as much of an upside in playing the youth player and letting them make mistakes like we've seen from a lot of other A-League clubs this season. Surely you're just picking on best form. And given his performance, there was already some conversation after the Sydney derby. This has only exacerbated that. I think the first one, the penalty, obviously it's tough. You're in a one-on-one situation. Yeah. But I think if he plays it how he did in that way, it's only ever going to be a penalty. I don't think he gave himself a chance. And then the second one, to get beat at your near post like that, especially so late on in such an important moment, it doesn't look great either.
That second one is really the killer for me, because the first one, I can completely understand and empathise with his desire to want to get to the ball there. How many times have we seen where the goalkeeper's sort of got caught in between or, whatever, and then it's an easy finish for the striker. Like, I can kind of, admire the dedication and the commitment to going for the ball there. Obviously, like you said, Lockie, it's only going to really realistically end in a penalty, but, it was, at least he made a decision there. He didn't get caught flat-footed and then beaten, anyway. So, I kind of don't hate it as much as I hate that second one, because he's covering his near post. Like, he has that perfectly covered. He's done a tremendous job to not let that through, and then he just lets it through. It's like you've positioned yourself perfectly. You've got defensive cover at the back post, so it's not going to sneak in there. You've got your markers playing their men really, really well. Like, there is no threat here. Just do not let the ball go past you at your near post. And it's not like it was hit really, really hard either, right? It's not like it was a complete rocket where you're like, okay, if he puts his hand up for that, he's breaking every finger that he's got. Like, it's, it was just sort of a normal shot at the near post, and he just didn't get to it. I think it's incredibly poor, because if he was, 3 yards to his right, and he's leaving a little bit of a gap, you go, that's bad positioning, or good instinct from the striker to be able to take the shot and hit it into that gap. But in this, it's the striker's taking a stupid shot there. There is no reason why he should be shooting at the near post with Devonish Mears covering it like that. And yet he gets fortunate enough that it goes in, because, Devonish Mears just doesn't stop it. So that's a massive mistake. And obviously, yes, it's cost them the win. But yeah, I think it's really putting a lot of doubt on, his ability as a goalkeeper now. And it's, it seems like this is the same story a lot of A-League clubs are going through, in terms of one keeper comes in, has a couple of good games, then goes really bad, so somebody else comes in and looks good for the first game, and then they have a run of bad form, and it's, who do you play? The lesser of two evils sort of thing.
Yeah.
Redmayne at least has that experience, right? Which is always the thing that's talked about with him, is, he's been around, he's done that, he's got the experience, he should be knowing what he's doing. Whereas Devonish Mears, he said he's 28, but it's not like he's had a huge amount of experience for that age, especially for a goalkeeper. So, it's a difficult one. I think that he had a really poor game. Partner that, like you said, Lockie, with the Sydney derby, and it doesn't look great for him. But, Sydney, what do they do now? They're going to be heading away. Tough fixture, as Matt has sort of touched on. It's probably going to be a quite cagey affair. Who's going to be your best choice for that one? I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
Yeah, as you allude to, like, they have a bye in the A-League, and so do the Mariners, because they have back-to-back weeks of AFC competition. So it's not like you can give Redders a warm-up if you wanted to. It's either straight in.
Go out there and show us. Yeah.
But as we know from Peru, he's, okay at stepping in clutch moments and getting the job done, right? So it'd be interesting to see where they go. Matt, you posed this question in the group chat. Do away goals count? And I went through the regulations of the competition. I believe the answer is no. I believe the answer is no.
I think it was something that kind of, as a universal standard, FIFA have kind of wanted to change over time. I think the AFC were one of those competitions where they've kind of said, we'll do away with it. So, but I wasn't entirely sure. So
neither was I, to be honest. And look, the AFC do love to copy UEFA and what they do. So the away goal rule going away over there, and it goes away here as well. I do want to lastly give some praise to the club as well, because we often talk about Asian club football and not quite having the respect it deserves from Australian audiences. And it's always been this question of, we're looking overseas, in the West it's crazy, Japan, Korea, China, the fan acceptance and just positioning of this competition as an elite luxury and a privilege, right, Matt, doesn't seem to be replicated in Australia. But the Sydney CEO Mark Aubrey has made a few media appearances, I guess you call it, really trying to promote the game, saying fans should be treating it, no differently, like a UEFA Champions League match, like a Europa League game or an A-League final. It should hold that, presence about it. This is only the second knockout tie that Sydney FC have ever played in Asian continental football, and it should be important. And I think for me, it's really encouraging for a club to be coming out with that kind of attitude about the competition.
I think if you actually look back even at sort of the AFC Cup games that some of the Mariners were playing, obviously they didn't have like a home 2-leg final. They went over to Muscat, which is so insanely far away from Gosford, to the point where they didn't get to have that big experience where a lot of fans attended. But I think with the way Australian sports fans are about something like this, you put a piece of silverware on the line, people show up. So I think you give us a high-ranking semi-final. Dare I say they somehow get past Hiroshima and make a final. People, there will be I'm hoping 25,000-30,000.
They'll get to host it, right? I think it's the East year. I think.
I should know the answer to that, but I'm not looked into it.
You're the expert here, Matt.
I do apologise. I know that obviously in the Champions League Elite, Saudi have bought out the semi-finals and final, which is, it is what it is. But I don't actually know about Champions League 2, so I naturally would. I mean, look, if you're right in saying that would be
I'm
brilliant.
Confident.
But
let's hang Lockie out to dry.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll get back on that one. But I mean, honestly, you look back at some of these Mariners games when people started to realise this is a competition that we are actually going to win. They were actually getting some pretty good crowds to some of those later games. They just didn't get the big home semi-final or final that would have drawn a significant crowd. We're talking about Sydney FC here. Yeah, it just simply won't be that hard to for the gravity of what's going on to be better promoted, and for a big crowd to turn up. They've just got to actually tangibly see it and touch it and feel it. Which I'm going to be honest, after the crowd that was there, saw a 2-2 draw with Bangkok United, they're going to have to take some winning over. But again, John Book, as it's been well documented, they're not going so flash hot, and they're coming off season. So
yeah.
I just feel like there is capacity there to win. They've just got to go to Bangkok and pull off some magic.
Absolutely. All right, Jacob, on the Mariners, just quickly, because I feel like their story has been well told. It, as I said in the intro, right, it's gone from bad to worse. Not only did they lose again, but 3 players left the ground injured. Ryan Edmondson, who Jacko has said is probably now out for the season, which is incredibly unfortunate. Trent Sainsbury went out in the first half. And then you have Mikhail Docker, who left as a concussion substitute right towards the end of the game as well. That's just simply not what you need.
And if you were to go to the Mariners and go, right, on this starting lineup, please circle the 3 players you don't want injured. I would say probably Sainsbury and Docker would be 2 of those,
definitely.
And there's a shout for Edmondson there as well. Like, it could not have happened to 3 worst players for the Mariners, to be honest. Like, jeez, like Sainsbury's just come back from injury. There's sort of a renewed hope that he's going to help restore some defensive competency at the club, and he's gone again. Docker has been really the only bright spark in large portions of the season for them. Concussion, who knows how long that's going to be, right? They can be short 1 week, miss a game things to a longer lasting injury. And then Edmondson, who, there's been talks about, is he good enough this season? Is he, who's going to be the striker? Is it going to be him? Is it going to be Qual? Is it going to be somebody else?
It has to be Qual now.
It has to be Qual now, and it's like, and I feel like Edmondson has scored a couple goals recently as well. So it's like, it just seems to be, pick the 3 worst players for it to happen to. Bang, it's happened. So, the fact that it happened in a game as well, where they're playing for $100,000, like they're not playing for their future in the competition. Like, it doesn't, the integrity of the game doesn't really matter to them, right?
Jacob.
The coefficient. You've got me beat there, but no, I mean, it matters for the wider Australian footballing public, but for the club themselves, it's a bit of cash, yes, but in terms of actually winning something, it doesn't matter. And they've gone and lost 3 crucial players. That is, absolutely massive. And we've spoken a lot about City and their injury troubles, but the Mariners, meanwhile, have been having this all going on as well, and just perhaps because they've not had the results, nobody's really spoken about it as much. But they are in dire straits, and with the window just having closed as well, right? Like, they can only sign free agents now, so it's going to be a tough ask for them.
Yeah, brutal. Matt, I'm going out on a little bit of a whim here as we transition into some U20 Asian Cup chat. Was there some big goal card miss on the side of your screen that I saw you reacting to?
Jordan Nomus took the lead against Saudi, and Saudi have had about 70 or 80% of the ball. They are just holding it back, and Jordan are getting frustrated. So, match of the day, that one. So
we'll go back to that. We'll go back to that in a second. Let's focus on the Young Socceroos for now, because they got off to a lovely start in their first game against the Kyrgyz Republic. 5-1, probably could have been a little bit more as well. Braces to Musa Toure and Luka Jovanovic, our fellow colleague Antonis would be screaming #SA great until the cows come home at that one. Lots of South Australian representation in this team, but lots of A-League representation, and on the face of it, a lot of regular A-League players. This squad seems pretty strong, and you couldn't have asked for much of a better first game.
Let's not forget, A-League alumni as well. I mean, we're immediately talking about the likes of Jalen Pym and Daniel Benny. Just a really, really good impact for the team. Trevor Morgan had a media spot, and I hope I mentioned this in the RBA chat. He basically they teed up a VNR really quickly to immediately kind of distribute it out to anyone who wanted to sort of catch an ear from him before kickoff, because he revealed firstly, and just something that caught me really by surprise, that the JFA, the Japanese Federation, knew that we had a lot of players coming back from Europe. They offered to host us for a camp in Saitama, which for one of our direct rivals is wild. Ooh. Yeah, wild. So they were coming back from Saitama to Shenzhen, which is on the border with Hong Kong. So I have a bit of a theory that a lot of the teams here are actually staying in Hong Kong and not China. But they obviously they'd just flown in, and there was a bit of a timing issue. Trevor Morgan does this on the spot interview, and I think he had a really kind of huge dig at Vidmar's failures with the Ollie Roos. Inadvertently, of course. He's not mentioned anyone by name or said this or that, but he's obviously said that in the past, I think the issue with a lot of setups is they've played too safe. And what did they come out and do? They were playing a weaker opponent. They were immediately on the front foot. They had 4 goals in half an hour, right? Yeah. So he has actually really stuck by his word. We're going to use our strengths, Someone like Torre came in massive in that respect, Benny was really, really lively on the wing, and he was inverted as well. He was playing both sides of the pitch, which for someone who is now at a championship level and has racked up, 10-plus appearances for QPR, played a pre-season game against Premier League opposition. I mean, that's exactly the impact that you want. And again, with how favourable this draw is, this team just has such a high ceiling. I'm just worried about the inevitable question with Australian sides. Where are things going to look a bit shaky? Where are things going to go wrong? I'm naturally asking that question just because it almost seems ridiculous that things are looking this right. And again, not to yap on and be all nerdy about the neutral fixtures, but Iraq, one of our main threats in the quarterfinal, they failed to win today. They drew with North Korea. So it is right there for the taking. And honestly, that semi-final berth belongs to no one else but Australia at this point, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and of course, a semi-final berth means that qualification for the World Cup as well, which...
The World Cup in Chile, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely massive. It is worth mentioning, if you've been a watcher of the Australian national teams and perhaps been frustrated about the way they go about it, as you say, watch this under-20 team. Go on 10 play. You might have to scroll all the way to the bottom of the channel section. I had some trouble the other night, but it's free on 10 play, and they're playing some lovely football at good hours of the evening as well for an Asian competition. So their next game is on Saturday, I want to say, Saturday evening. Who's their opposition?
Against the Qatari side that lost to China. So again, it's there for the taking. They have a history of beating this side 9-0, for goodness sake. So get out on the front foot, make an impact. Put the goals in the net before they can even think about it. Just do it. Yeah.
And then Jacob, was it fun to see half of the Adelaide United team as well doing well on their absence? You got Johnny Yule, Musa Torre, obviously former player, Luka Jovanovic, Johnny Yule, Fabian Taladera, Paniotis Kikianis, and Stephen Hall, former goalkeeper as well. Yeah. That's a lot of talent coming out of SA.
It's the under 20 side wouldn't be a thing without Adelaide, I don't think, at this point in time. But no, I mean, yeah, it's good to see them going out there and performing, but it hurts as well knowing that they're not playing for the Reds, and I'm sure that Carl Viet probably feels the same way watching them going on and performing and playing like that and going, I wish I had them this week for the game against the Jets, or in the next couple of weeks as well. So no, it's awesome to see though, and I think it goes to show everybody's always talking about how well Adelaide does with player development, but this just goes to show that that's exactly the case. Like it's one thing that where perhaps, and I've been critical of it, the external talent ID of Adelaide United has maybe not been historically so great, whether that's interstate or overseas, but within South Australia and within Adelaide, the coaching staff know their stuff, and they know the players here, and they do really, really well in helping develop them, working one-on-one with them. It's something Carl Viet has always done really well. Ayrton Andrioli as well, the head of youth development at Adelaide United, has been a legend for it over the years. So it's really the model for clubs to follow. I think if they are really serious about youth development, it's look at what Adelaide are doing, and it's building connections with the local clubs. There's no rivalry there, right? Like if if a player's signed from Adelaide City to Adelaide United, City don't go, oh, bloody Adelaide United stealing our players. They're like, no, this is awesome. This is a great opportunity for them. It goes to show how good we are as a club at the local level as well. Hey, if you want the opportunities, come to us. We've produced these players, right? So it's like, United have done a really good job of connecting with the local community, the local footballing community on that, and it's paying dividends when they have players like, Yul, Taladera, Kikianis, Hall, Jovanovic, Toure, all coming through and performing at the A-League level, then beyond, and then also for the national teams as well. It's awesome to see. Like I said, I think it's the blueprint really for the other clubs to follow at this point.
Absolutely. Good luck to the Young Socceroos. We'll be following along with them. If you do want to follow along a little closer with the whole tournament in its entirety, Matt, we're very excited. We launched a new show this week called The Final Frontier, which you're heading up for us, talking about Asian and Pacific football as a whole. Would you want to give a quick little spiel as to why people might find it interesting to tune in?
Yeah, look, I mean, we live in a world now where I think, previously a lot of what's right and what goes well in football in this part of the world would not have been as well acknowledged or even understood. But now the tide has changed. Kushinov is signing for Man City. People are aware of the fact that Japan can knock Spain and Germany to second and third in a World Cup group. The tide has completely changed, and I just want a project where, sitting here watching Jordan, Saudi Arabia's under 20s can tangibly mean something a little bit more. And again, football has already reached the point where the conversation isn't about how can football grow in North America, how can it grow in Europe. It's about stop playing games. There's too much going on. People are too, it's oversaturated. And it's just, this is a part of the world where it's not oversaturated, where we can do things to grow, where we can get more eyeballs on the product. And I mean, the last Asian Cup for me was the culmination of it. Seeing so many, independent content creators or, just natural fans of the game getting out on social media. People in Europe and North and South America were watching the Asian Cup. It had exclusive broadcast rights with the CBS in the United States and Paramount Plus. And people tuned in to watch it and they cared about it. And I mean, obviously a lot of North American voices who are of dissent are being a really, really big part of that. But it again, for me, just surmises what all of this growth mindset is about, and in a way I hope to contribute going forward as someone who now has a pretty good relationship with the AFC as a whole. So, yeah.
Absolutely. The Asia Pacific region, football's final frontier. We'll put links to the YouTube and the podcast, Spotify in the description as well. Matt does a great job. The pilot episode is out now. You can go have a listen. Let's bring it back to Australia because it was deadline day. Now, it's interesting we talk about the comparisons of the world football. Deadline day in Australia does not mean the same thing as it does to the rest of the world. Obviously, clubs can still sign free agents, and that's clear all over the world. But, there is a different level that we're dealing with here. But there were a number of deals done. I think the biggest one for me is the Wellington Phoenix have got their visa signing in on deadline day. 29-year-old Portuguese attacking midfielder Francisco Geraldes. He's on loan, funnily enough, from Johor, which is the team that beat the Mariners on Tuesday evening. He was not part of that team. He didn't make that trip. He's interestingly spent the last 6 months on loan in the Spanish second tier and not really playing as well, but Chiefy seemed quite impressed by his quality. And Jacob, I wrote about this issue in Sliding Doors this week, but Marco Rojas was a player that Chiefy quite clearly in preseason highlighted as a focal point of how they wanted to play. And looking back, for a player that had only come off playing a little bit for the Brisbane Roar after taking a break from football and has had his problem with injuries, that's probably quite a big bet to make in retrospect. And obviously now he's out for the season, right? So they're absolutely crying out for a player like this that can be a bit more inventive in the final third. And they've at least signed Geraldes here with that intent.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones where he's played in Asia, sort of, hopefully not completely oblivious to, Australia's existence. It's funny listening to some of the international signings that clubs get where they're like, oh yeah, we had to search up the country on Google to see what it's all about. It's like, because we thought it was all just kangaroos and stuff, and it's like hopefully he's at least aware of kind of what Australia's got going on. But no, I mean, the fact that Chiefy's big on him suggests a lot, because we know he's very particular about the way that he likes to do things and the way he likes to play. And, when he sees qualities in players, that's when he can get the best out of them. So hopefully this is a good sign for the Phoenix. So they've been really just lacking in that department, like you said, Lockie, in terms of creativity and final third threat this season. If it's not Barbarouses, nobody's really doing anything for them. So it's been a tough season. Obviously, yes, they've had a lot of losses, and it's always going to be difficult to back up a performance like they did have last season with all of those losses to account for as well. But the fact that it's taken till January really to get this sort of big signing for him, that sucks a little bit as well. It means that they've started off the season on the back foot, almost not having the sort of perhaps caliber of international player come in that they would have liked, but he's here now. So this is going to be a big sign to see what Chiefy has planned, right, in terms of how is he going to use him, what sort of impact is he going to have, and what does that mean for the Phoenix? Because if they start playing good football now with him in, and you can sort of see the vision that Italiano's had for the side this season, you can go, hold on, maybe they were just lacking that one piece that they really needed. They couldn't quite get over the line before the season started, whatever it might be. next year they can perhaps return to form. But it's a case of wait and see. But I mean, everything suggests that it could be a decent move. He's not 34 years old on his last legs, looking for his last deal in football, here to Australia to retire in nice weather with the beaches. Well, he's not even in Australia, is it? It's New Zealand. But it's not one of those sorts of final vacation type deals. He's 29 years old. Portugal, I think, has been heavily underrepresented in the A-League for the caliber of players that they have. I mean, immediately comes to mind is Fabio Ferreira as one who came in and just dominated for a few seasons with Adelaide, the Mariners, and Perth. So there's good players in Portugal, and there's a reason why they've gone all over the world for different clubs. So no, hopefully it pans out for the Phoenix, because I think when they're playing and when they've got that support around them at Sky Stadium, and like we saw at the back end of last year, it's a really exciting thing to watch them play. But they've just not quite had that this season, and maybe this is that missing piece of the puzzle.
I do absolutely love the idea of a foreign player getting a call from their agent saying there's a team in the Australian League that's really interested in you. And it's like, oh yeah, great, we've been looking for somewhere, let's go. And then you get on a plane and the destination is New Zealand, and they go, whoa, what are we doing here? just no clue in the world. Hopefully that happens. We would have heard that story, I'm sure, but it's got to happen eventually. That'd be hilarious. There's a couple other moves, Matt. I'm just going to go through them and you can pick apart which ones you want to talk about. A Grasshopper has made their way to the A-League. There's a bit of an Australian connection with that club in the last few years. First Avil, of course, and now Iran Kunda's got his loan move out there. This time Brisbane Roar have picked up 27-year-old forward Asuma Abubakar. That's a loan until the end of the season. Sorry, no, that one's not a loan. That's just a transfer. But there is a loan move, and this one's inside the A-League, coming out of the west of Sydney. Alex Badalato to Melbourne Victory for a loan to the end of the season. Now, he's one of these players that is away on under-20s duty at the moment. He played the full 90 against the Kyrgyz Republic on Wednesday, so he'll obviously commence that loan when he returns to Australia. And then from your side of the country, Matt, Perth Glory youth keeper Robbie Cook has signed a 2.5-year deal at Leeds United, who look quite likely to be a Premier League side next year, which is quite exciting. Currently top of the championship, and that's the English championship, if there was any confusion, before even debuting for the A-League. So an exciting move for him as well.
The Badalato move is really neat. With regards to any foreign moves that have happened, I just think context is so important, and I think we all ought to have a blanket rule of any foreign player that comes into the league is a 50-50. They're going to work or they're not. You just have to have that approach, because we can have some really really blind insight to who any of these players are. Look, Robbie Cook is actually the only one I can talk about with any true authority, and he is actually I think he actually is half English. He's not even going with like foreign qualifications. It's not even like he's needed to qualify for a visa or anything like that. So I think he actually always was in talks with big clubs, and there's a really, really big agent scene in the NPLWA at the moment for whatever reason. Those Pearman moves, and of course the Daniel Benny move happened with very, very good reason. So I just think that as long as those links are always going to exist, and so as long as someone like Robbie Cook has played a lot of senior NPL football at a really, really young age, is someone that already has the links to England, and then the agent situation on top. It was always going to happen, and he's been linked for a very, very long time. And to that extent, I'm not surprised in the slightest, and I'm actually shocked that I know this much about it, because I don't really watch a whole lot of NPL football over here. But yeah, I think the whole deadline day thing, the whole let's watch out for intrigue, it's obviously dead in the water in A-League football. So I just don't know where else to go with it.
No,
it's so enough. Funny. It's so defeatist, right? Like everywhere else in the world, it's like everyone's getting excited about what last minute deals are going to get over the line. It's like, yeah, we're just not going to sign anyone, are we? I
think it's because the really, really diehard fans know that the competition has no money, and everyone's on these, basically quasi 1-year contracts. Like nothing's going to happen. Stop trying to make it exciting.
Yeah, it's got a way to go. Hopefully we'll get there. You can expect, though, maybe you know about this, man, I don't know, but one more move, at least from Perth Glory. Cirilla said they're still looking to get a free agent over the line. And as Jacob has said, free agents who were free agents before this transfer window, I believe is how it works, can still be signed at any time. Let's take a look finally to finish off our show, as always on a Friday, with our weekend looking ahead to what is now round 19. I think we've got a couple more weeks before we skip a number again, because they're the midweeks that happened 3 months ago or something like that. But round 19 this week, we're going to kick off with a burning question, and mine is, can Melbourne City start to click with their players returning from injury? Their loss on the weekend was 3 in a row for Aurelio Vidmore's side. This kind of transitional period where the kids have done really well and you're trying to integrate all these really quality injury players, it seems to have upset the apple cart just a little bit. So I really wonder, the likes of Matt Leckie, Tilio, Max Caputo got his first start, right? These are all quality players, but obviously the goal is to play well by the end of the season, but to do that you have to be in the final series itself, and they're in danger of slipping out if they fall any further. Jacob?
Mine is, can Western do the double over Auckland? Of course, they're really the only team to comprehensively beat Auckland this season. Perth obviously managed to get that 1-0 win over the line against 10 men, but Western went away to Auckland and put 4 past a team that at that point I think had conceded probably only about 2 or 3 goals all season. So they seem to be wise to something that perhaps the other clubs in the league aren't with regards to Auckland. And it's Auckland going to Tarniet. We spoke in the last episode about the Tarniet wind, and is that going to play a factor in things? And I feel like the run that Western are on at the moment, they can do it, I think, quite easily and handily. And it would be really exciting to see them do that, because now all of a sudden you've got the 2 teams that have been towards the top all season with Auckland and Adelaide, and Western suddenly are starting to make a run to challenge for top spot as well. It'll just make things really, really exciting. And they seem to have Auckland's number. It's just one of those ones, and I think that the way that Western have set themselves up will do well against Auckland again. So we'll wait and see, but I think it's a slight possibility there.
Yep, I'm with you. Very nice, Matt.
Yeah, in the vein of kind of things that just look a certain way on the we've got Melbourne City hosting Perth and Adelaide hosting Newcastle. Anyone with a pair of eyes can pretty much predict what's going to happen there. So I'm already going off the fact that the home teams are going to book 3 points. How comfortably will they win those 2 respective games?
Wow, very
It's
confident.
going to come back to bite me on the other side.
I think maybe in about 2 minutes we have some arguments for the contrary, but we'll see. Worst case scenario for me, it's Melbourne victory and Wellington Phoenix playing out a boring 0-0 draw in what is supposed to be Victory's big 20-year anniversary. They just released some footage of Cavalieri speaking to the players, in the lead up to this game, and about the history of the club. Fascinating decision to pick this fixture, where famously Wellington Phoenix won last year without having a shot on target. So it might not be the entertainment on the field, but hopefully they have a good time. Jacob?
My worst case scenario kind of comes back to what I was talking about before. Auckland wins. It would mean that they start to pull away. They'd maintain at least a 2-point gap to Adelaide, and it would stop Western's run. Western would be sitting still in 3rd most likely, I believe, but then a far distance from top. So if Auckland don't win, it just keeps things exciting at the top. We've had a really close top 6, top 7 all season long, but right at the top it's been super close as well. And this is a chance to keep things close if Western can get the job done. So I think it would kind of it wouldn't put an end to the title fight, because obviously Adelaide would still, if they win, be only 2 points behind Auckland. But it sort of eliminates that outsider chance of Western making a late run for it, which I find really exciting.
I think, Matt, yours is in a similar vein, right?
I was going to kind of look, if you look at the schedule from which games are kind of a foregone conclusion and which games are exciting, you kind of end up in a 3-2 split, right? The other 2 games that aren't Western and Auckland are, in fact, Victory's game with Wellington, which I'm hoping will be competitive, but still expect Victory to win. And then, MacArthur against Western Sydney is always a pretty, I think historically it's already proven in its short history to be a pretty entertaining clash when the 2 meet. And if we hope for the Victory and MacArthur to win, in their 2 games, it'll actually cause. I don't know why I'm talking about it in positive terms. I've just realised this is worst case scenario. They're going to cause a blockade on the top 6. So yeah, that would ultimately be, I guess, either depending on who you support and where your emotions lie, that'll either be really good or actually a little bit disappointing, because we know that fight to the top 6 can really be the lifeblood of the A-League at times. I think just in terms of the metrics and keeping everyone interested come rounds sort of 23 through to 27, because they're typically very kind of just boring fixtures and no one's showing up, and we don't want to see it. So I've accidentally gone into that hoping it will happen, but no, I don't. Victory in the Bulls. Yeah, let's hope they don't win.
Well, what we do want is a final round where everything is so tight between the top 6 and the premiership that people are actively calling for every game to be played at the same time, because you got one result here, one result there, and the dominoes keep falling, and then you have I don't know, Auckland and Brisbane playing a 0-0 draw because Auckland need a point for the premiership and Brisbane need a point for top 6 or something like that. Brisbane probably a bad
top
example.
6.
Yeah, that's a bad example.
I knew where he was going with that. Can I just say, just to throw it back to again that kind of mid to late 2010s era, where literally every time that kind of March April period would come up and everyone goes, we need simultaneous kickoffs, and then there was the one season where Sydney and the Jets were that far ahead of everyone else. Everyone's like, no, this would be a terrible idea, and then it ultimately ended up having a final twist in that Sydney didn't even play in the grand final and they won the league by 15 points.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, yeah, the A-League just kind of works the way it is. Fancy that.
Yes, very crazy. Finally, a ping from distance. Now, I'm going to say the Jets to earn something against the Reds. Now, there's a few things at play here. Obviously, the Reds, they have a lot of players out, right? So if you think about the players they're losing, Kikianis is probably the biggest player in their defence, right? So you look at a back 4 of Kitto, Piraeus, Isaias and Vreens. Piraeus is bombing up the wing a lot. If he's a bit forward and they can get him in transition, that, the other 3 players there have an average age of 34. And what we saw with the Jets, to be fair, what they did very well towards the end of the Victory game was bide out their time and expose a very high line that Victory's defenders probably weren't too apt at defending. So there's an argument to say that strategy has its merits here again against the Reds. So I'm just giving them a little hope of getting something in that game. Jacob?
Yeah, and I think if you partner that as well with, Adelaide's not been great at home this season. It was tight the last 2 these teams met. I think it was just 1-0 to Adelaide. Newcastle finding form. It looks threatening. Yeah, I can definitely see that happening. The other one that, mine is, similar vein in that it's perhaps not so ambitious as things have been in previous weeks, is no goals in Victory Phoenix.
That's not ambitious at all.
I just think it's a foregone conclusion at this point. It's going to be a 0-0 draw. The most exciting thing to happen would be maybe a VAR call on a red card or something. It's just going to be one of those games, has all the makings for it. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say is going to happen.
Fair enough, Matt.
Jacob, I feel like you've already done your bit in manifesting this whole Auckland arrive in Tarneet and they're just cursed or something. And I'll tell you what, I don't know why, but I'm really feeling it as well. I just feel like it's something about playing there is going to catch them off guard, being a new team. Their foreign players have already spoken about the fact that travel's just been something they're not mentally prepared for. And when they've gone away to an uncomfortable environment, when they had to fly all the way to Perth, what happened? Do you know what I mean? So I just feel some sort of natural element is going to get in the way. Let's say Western do it again, Auckland lose. And I'm also the one sitting here saying Adelaide have already bagged 3 points against the Jets before the game's even kicked off. That puts Adelaide top of the A-League, which is incredible. So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really think, especially as someone who's been a very staunch defender of Auckland and wants them to have a lot of success early on, and who even said during the week that they've already won the A-League and they're going to be sending players to the Club World Cup. I'm in this position now expecting the Reds to be top of the table, which, it's wild.
Very nice. All right, I think that will do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Matt Olsen, we very much appreciate your expertise tonight.
No worries, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Jacob Stevens, thank you as well.
No problem. Good fun as always.
All right, we will be back on Tuesday for a recap of round 19 in the A-League Men's competition. I'm sure there'll be a Young Socceroos game thrown in there as well. And whatever else happens in the world of Australian football, don't forget the Final Frontier if you want to hear more about Asian football as well. Thank you very much for listening tonight. We'll see you then. Goodbye.